Facebook friends, Marianne here. I just wanted to do a shout out to all of you today because I've been really upset by the things I'm seeing going across social media in terms of giving this idiot, I will say that. I don't care that he is a successful football player. The man is a misogynistic a-hole idiot. And I'm really offended that he is being shown as representing Catholicism, because I came from a very strong Catholic family, and that Catholic faith is what made my father decide when he had adopted me. He'd already had 3 children. The oldest is my sister. And so there's 10 years between all of us. I'm 47. I have a brother that's like 57, a brother that's 67, and my sister is now 77. And, you know, he went up to, at the time, 7-Eleven had this big bar on top of, you know, the skyscraper that their headquarters were in. And in this bar, they would, you know, they'd go and meet and hang out. And Dad said that he went up there and he just looked out over the area of the city and just thought, what is this future going to hold for my daughter? And he said in that moment, he decided, I'm going to raise her like a son and let her femininity take care of itself. And years later, he would explain to me, he said, God would take care of that. And he was absolutely right. I grew up being invited to go and sit in his office and told to be quiet and watch. And then after he'd have his meetings, he'd come and he'd quiz me. Who had something to offer they didn't put on the table? Who was lying? Who was nervous? Who was nervous because they were intimidated by him being CEO versus who was nervous because they were trying to sell him a bill of goods? You know, he really trained me on, you know, then it'd be entering a room. How do you take control of the room without saying a word? And it was all about how you stand. How do you shake someone's hand to show dominance and yet not a threat? I mean, all these things were things that his father had taught him and that fathers had taught sons forever. And the other thing was an education. He and my mom put me in the Hockaday, and at the time I was the first non-white person in the class. And so it was a real wake-up call, and it wasn't easy. And I remember other lessons of, you know, sitting under a big, you know, tree with acorns falling off, and him putting an acorn in his hand, holding it out to me and saying, see this little acorn, it would become that tree one day. And being a little kid and being like, oh my God, because that was one of the most amazing things in the world to me. And I remember my father sitting there and saying, you know, the difference is that this little acorn has to fight and fight and fight to reach the sun, and it never will. But in its fight to reach the sun, it becomes that tree. And he looked at me and he said, you have a hearing loss and you have a choice. I can put you into a special school for people for the hearing impaired, or I can put you somewhere where it is going to be really difficult. You can continue at Hockaday. They're not going to cater to you, and you're probably never going to make a straight A student, but you are going to learn so much more. And moreover, you're going to learn how to fight and be able to make it in life. Well, today, as a 47-year-old woman, I've been able to do a million different things around the world. I've spoken at the UN. I've spoken at the White House. I've spoken at the House of Lords. I've negotiated treaties. You know, I have different corporations that are doing for-profit things that I believe in because they're doing social responsible investing or they're making impact. I have a nonprofit that has locations around the world in Japan and Mexico and the UK with outreach in places like Africa and New Zealand. We've done stuff all over. And you know what allowed me to do that? The fact that my Catholic father wanted me to have an education, because his mother, when I went to her, and I asked her, Mama T, I don't want to make my debutante. My father said, well, you're going to have to get her permission. And I was nervous because she was at the time the oldest living debutante in Dallas. And I knew what it was. I'd been trained to do what they call a Texas dip, where you bend all the way down till your nose touches the ground. And the significance is supposed to show that you'll be submissive. You're put on a white dress. It's supposed to show what a pretty bride you'll look. And then you're supposed to have all this jewelry to show the kind of money you come from. And then you stand there and they list all the male names, what your great-grandfather achieved, what your grandfather achieved, what your father achieved, never what the women do. And I remember saying to my dad, this is the most misogynistic practice. I wouldn't mind standing there if they also listed what the women in the family achieved. But, you know, I don't believe this. I have value. And he said, go talk to her. And when I shared this, and I was so nervous, I thought, she's like, come here. And I thought she was going to slap me. She didn't. Instead, honey, if I had to do over again, I wouldn't bow for any man. You're free. And this was my very Catholic grandmother who taught me the rosary, taught me meditation, taught me how to work with, you know, the divine spirit, and was really my first teacher in what I would call gnosis, having a personal relationship with the divine, with God. My dad was also one of my first spiritual teachers and taught me many other things too. And our family, if you came into our house, you would see an incredible framed piece that was given to her father, and John W. Philp, because he was a member of the Order of St. Gregory the Great, which is a Knight Templar group. And interestingly enough, it was because they had a lady there was named Hypatia, that way back when, we're talking about the ancient Roman Empire, she was a teacher, and she taught about what then existed in terms of astronomy, in terms of ancient mathematics and all sorts of things. And she taught Roman senators. And it was I would guess you would call them the extremists of their time, that were offended that a woman would be educated. And they didn't like that a woman had so much influence over male senators. So they killed her. They killed her by using shells and ripping the flesh off her body until she was dead. And that's what they did in the name of misogyny. And at the time, they were trying to make the argument that this was the real Catholic faith. And meanwhile, there were others who didn't agree with that, who saw the value of the knowledge that she had, that she continued, because her father had been an ancient, knowledgeable man and had passed it on to her. So they saved all of Hypatia's stuff, and she became made a saint. I believe it's St. Catherine. So anyway, the reason I share all this, my great-grandfather was given this award because he was working on interfaith work with people that were not even Christian. And this is like way back, this would have had to have been in the teens or whatever. So, the reason I'm showing this is he was a Catholic. My grandmother was a Catholic. She absolutely loved going to school. Her parents sent her where she studied with Ela Hockaday, who was part of the Gertrude Stein Saloon. Believe me, Gertrude Stein would not put up with misogyny. So there's this incredible legacy. And my family wanted me to have that and expose me to that. And they always taught me that I had a good brain and that I should use it and that I should do everything I could to get an education. And my mom especially emphasized to me that every woman needs an education. And I can't tell you how important that is personally. If something ever happened to me, if for some reason I lost all my wealth, I had nothing to rely on, I could still make a living and feed myself because I have an education. So, in this day and age, for some a-hole football player to get up and say to a bunch of women that have gotten degrees and worked their asses off to get it, if they should just give up any aspirations, any ambition, not bother with education, just go make babies and spend the rest of their lives in the kitchen, and to claim that that is Catholic doctrine, well, I'm just going to tell you that's BS. And I would actually go even further and say that's heresy, because that's putting words in God's mouth. God never said all women should remain ignorant. God, in the Bible, wanted women who were educated. A lot of people don't know that the name Mary, the reason why you see 3 Marys hanging out with Jesus, it wasn't that he liked collecting Marys. It was because Mary actually meant priestess. A lot of people also don't know that virgin meant that you were a learned person. It did not mean that you had never had sex. We have all these new connotations today, but if you actually know your theology, you realize that guess what? Your Savior, Jesus Christ, hung out with knowledgeable, educated women who were trained to hang out with rabbis. Yay! For those that want to argue that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, guess what? Wrong again. So, when she used the alabaster jar to bless Jesus' feet, that was actually, you can argue it all day long, but this fact is true, that's actually a marriage ritual. And a lot of people would tell you that no rabbi was taken seriously unless he was married to a woman. So even if he didn't consummate it, he would not have been listened to. So that's why you had Mary Magdalene hanging out. So I'm just sharing all of this information with you because there is a long legacy of women having an education. You can go into the Old Testament and you can see that the Queen of Sheba was considered one of the most learned women in the world, and therefore the only woman that actually captured King Solomon's heart. And it even talks about it in the Bible that he loved her mind. So I'm just sharing all this because for anyone to try and use religion to say that women should remain ignorant, that what they're doing is they're taking parts of a Bible or religious text and they're using it to justify their own misogyny. And coming from a Catholic family that has amazing women in it, and many of these women I don't see eye to eye with on political issues or social issues, but I love them, and many of them I do see eye to eye with, and they are Catholic, and they really do believe in that. And one of my wonderful friends, Claire Hine, went to Hockaday School with me. She's a nun now, and she has 2 doctorates, one of the most educated women that I know, and she is incredible and doing beautiful work helping whole communities. So that's the power of an educated woman, that you can actually go out and make a difference. And I would actually say to anybody that really wants to look at this, considering that I was raised in a Catholic family, encouraged by my Catholic family, including when I went into the United Nations to receive an award, my Uncle Jerry called me as I walked in and told me how proud he was and that I was honoring the traditions of the family, including the love of recognizing the common humanity, the common soul, and another human being, which he believed came from Jesus Christ. So, I'm just sharing this with you because I'm sure there are probably a lot of Roman Catholics out there that really do have a lot of misogyny. Many others probably have been victims, and I use that term intentionally, of something called Quiverful, which has nothing to do with any form of Christianity, but was kind of a cult that was pretending to be a Bible study group. It infiltrated many different Christian churches of every kind of, Protestant, Methodist, Catholic, it didn't matter, Baptist. And they would green people in saying they were going to study the Bible, but Quiverful, Google it, Quiverful. If you Google it, you'll find that it's actually basically pushing for misogynistic beliefs and disguising themselves as prayer circles. So if you ever see that, shy away from it. It has nothing to do with Christian doctrine. But other than those things, when I've been around women who have been raised in the Catholic Church, one of the things you have to do in order to get your confirmation is you're required to study multiple other religions because they want to make sure that you know what you're doing. So it was because I studied multiple other religions, I actually chose not to confirm because I felt like I was seeing God in multiple different places. And you know what happened? The priest said to me, okay, so this is your path. I don't know any other religion right now, personally, that encourages people to do that. So, this is, I take exception to it. And I hope that those of you out there that know that I'm a feminist, and I definitely am, I define feminist as believing that men and women are equal in terms of our personal value as human beings. Obviously, men are physically stronger. Obviously, women are physically more limber on average. I'm sure you can find people that are extreme examples and could defeat the opposite gender. But for the most part, we have our different ways in which we achieve. And I hope that people will start looking at that and see that our genders need each other and that we don't really gain strength as a community by trying to limit what another gender should be allowed to do. So I'm just putting that out there. My family has obviously men and women. We have gay people in there. I'm bi. We have a lot of straight people. We have interracial marriage. And the point being that we believe that God has animated all souls, and therefore there is no one human being that is worth less than you. And if you believe that someone is worth less than you, then you've missed the entire point of the Word of God. So I obviously have not continued being Catholic, but it forms so much of my values. And I find it very personally upsetting that anyone would try and use its doctrine to say a woman should not have an education or have ambitions. And I won't hesitate to say that this NFL player, whose name I will not say, who decided to do that, he was insulting Catholicism. He was insulting women. His own mother was a physicist who obviously used her scientific, experience and successes to pay for his example, his education, his career. And I guess he's not grateful for her at all. But, I hope that those of you out there that are seeing this know that there are many Catholics who see the value of women. So please don't let this a-hole, which is exactly what he is, define that for you. So thank you. Just had to put that out there.